Hello, in this episode of Classic Topology Problems, I've got a simple but frequent problem that I see people doing, and that is using the cone for things like teeth, various spiked bracelets and hair and other situations. So, I understand why people do it because they think, okay, I want to make a tooth. How do I do that? I want to make a little spike. Well, I will go ahead and use the cone. That sounds like a good idea. So then you create the cone, you get this, and everything looks fine, but then when you try to subdivide, you will start to notice that this happens. As you notice, one level, 2, 3, 4, it's still perfectly sharp on top, which we don't want because it does not capture any nice highlights here. We don't want this perfect sharpness. And of course, you can, go in here and inset the bottom or just delete it. Inset and delete. So we can take care of the bottom, but you notice how the top doesn't quite give us a good result even with 4 levels. So what is the solution? Well, you want to use a box. So let's say you want to make a sharp tooth for a creature. The solution is that we create a box, and I'll give it the same length and width here. We're going to make it gray. Actually, let's give it more of a tooth color right here. All right. We're going to apply the poly, and we're simply going to, for example, extrude and then scale. Alright, so we're just going to scale it to be very small, and then we can turbo smooth, which will give us this much better tooth shape. If you want it to be sharper at the top, what you can simply do is just scale even more, and then maybe insert another loop near the top right here. And as you notice, you get that sharpness. And unlike with the cone, we get nice smoothness at the top, just a little bit of smoothness to give us that nice highlight when you render and when the light shines on here. So as you can see, it just looks much more appealing than this perfect point right here. Not to mention, it's easier to work with, easier to unwrap, and we don't have to go to a high level to get a good result here. And so now when you want to get your dinosaur tooth or your creature tooth, you can just rotate it. And then move this, rotate this. And so now you can get the kind of shape that you want. Alright, the same thing goes for any kind of spike on a bracelet or any kind of post-apocalyptic clothing. I'm going to switch to rotate. I'm going to switch to pick. Pick this object. We're going to use the third option, use transform coordinate center. We're going to go ahead and press shift after pressing A to activate angle snap. And we're going to get 7 instances. So there we go. Alright, so now we're getting a much better result here. And one more example is you're creating a strip of hair, so I can use a spline for that, and you can activate, for example, face constraints. Right click here, use face constraints. It's here doing on the character's head. I'm just going to go ahead and use smooth. So we're going to create a few control points here, alright. And so I can delete a few. So let's say, for example, we're creating some sort of anime stylized hair strand. Alright, we're going to go ahead and activate rendering, enable in viewport. We're not going to use radial though, because once again, that's going to give us our spikiness here. So, for example, now we're going to turbo smooth, we're going to get this. So I'm going to have to just select this and weld. Once again, we get that bad spike effect, and we get this bad subdivision with that perfect point right there. So we're going to go ahead and switch this to, let's say, rectangular. We're going to change the length and width. And also I will decrease the interpolation because this is a little bit too complex. We can just use something like this, for example, or even the 0. Then we can apply it to poly, and we can do things like scale this once again to get that kind of sharpness that we want. So if you want more stylization, you can do things like scale this. And if you, for example, let's say you want it to be a little bit sharp here. So if you insert loops through here, notice how we get that kind of sharpness going. Notice how here it starts to look more angular. So we can do things like select this and then maybe relax this a little bit. And so this is 3 examples of why you should avoid using cones. Are there any uses to cones? Well, maybe if you're doing an object that will not be subdivided. If you're doing a game asset, it could be useful then. So if you're creating a low poly, you can, for example, just do something like this, for example, and it could be a low poly. Other than that, if you're going to subdivide, it's recommended just use a box. It's much simpler that way. Easier to control, better subdivision, easy to unwrap and everything else. Thank you for watching, and take care.